When a manufacturer makes odd omissions at flagship prices, I've not been quiet here on the phone show, ranting about missing audio jacks, lack of storage expansion or expansion via proprietary format, lack of OIS in the camera, going back to mono speakers or a speaker which outputs through a Type-C jack. You get the idea. You'll recognise all of these complaints from flagship smartphones of the last year, of course. Which makes it all the odder that a phone like this, the new Moto G7 Plus, has every feature across the board, ticks all the boxes one could wish for, and yet only costs £270, including VAT in the UK, and perhaps even cheaper elsewhere in the world. Yes, it's the most expensive in the budget G7 range, but I'm also so impressed by what they've included for the price. You don't get something for nothing in any part of life, of course, and there are compromises, but way less than you might think. And in terms of value for money, the G7 Plus is off the scale. You can get more than 3 G7 Plus units for a single Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus, and the latter is most definitely not 3 times as good. I did have a play with the whole of the G7 range, but I've chosen to review this and this, the G7 Play, representing the top and bottom of the ranges, £270 to £150 in the UK. But let me cover the one you're most interested in, the Plus, first, and then I'll comment on the non-Plus, the Power and the Play. I'm going to stick to my S10 Plus comparison though, because the Moto G7 Plus is almost identical in size and feel, with Gorilla Glass front and curved back. And at this price, the centre frame of the phone is polycarbonate rather than aluminium, but it's still exquisitely made. The display is flat, which most people actually prefer. I think Samsung's curved screen edges look nice, but they aren't actually that popular. The screen is a big component in terms of cost, of course, and at this price we're talking 1080p LCD, not Samsung's QHD Dynamic AMOLED. It's perfectly fine for most purposes though. It only falls down when viewed at oblique angles in the sun. As with Samsung's flagships, the Moto G7 Plus doesn't skimp on ports and flexibility. 3.5mm audio, present and correct, though the output from the onboard DAC was average at best, nothing special. Still, you can also opt for a higher quality DAC into the USB Type-C port, or indeed the aptX Bluetooth link. It really is down to you. The Type-C port is also for data and 27-watt fast charging, using up to Quick Charge 4 plus USB Power Delivery 3 compatibility. Impressive. And you get a full spec 27-watt charger included in the box, no extra purchase needed, as on many other more expensive smartphones. There's a now familiar bottom speaker plus high frequencies from the earpiece to create faux stereo output. It's actually pretty loud. Have a listen to this. This is full volume, full volume, full volume on the Moto G7 Plus. Around the back, I'm heartened to report on a top-notch fingerprint sensor. It's instant, it's 100% reliable, both unlike dodgy in-screen scanners, see Phone Show 359, and you can do the swipe down trick to reveal controls and notifications. Motorola is keeping things simple and reliable here, and I salute them. The camera is the jewel in the crown though here, by far the best Motorola has ever put into one of its phones, yes, and that includes the flagship Z series, with a 16 megapixel f/1.7 unit with OIS. True autofocus is PDAF and not anything fancier or faster, but again, think of the somewhat miraculous price point. In good light, shots are very good indeed, with clarity and purity and a natural shallow depth of field when needed, plus genuine portrait and bokeh mode when selected thanks to a 5 megapixel depth sensor. Motorola claims a cleaner digital zoom system. I don't think it goes as far as using hand wobble and multiple exposures as on the Pixel 3 range, but it's better than ye olde digital zoom, and it's probably just some fancy AI interpolative tidying of zoomed photos over 2 times. But it's shooting handheld in low light that one's jaw has to drop for a £270 phone. The OIS is excellent and enables the capture of even delicate detail, simply amazing at the price. And you could compare night shots from this to those from £1,000 flagships without too much embarrassment, except perhaps to the owners of the latter who wondered why they paid so much. You get the usual shooting modes and effect, but I wanted to highlight the way zooming in or out is just a matter of swiping up or down on the UI, just as on the old Nokia Lumias, one of my favourite features, now and then. Test video here on the Moto G7 Plus in weak winter or early spring sunshine. Good quality stereo audio, I have to say. The optics and the lenses and so forth, maybe not quite such high quality, which is why you can probably see some artifacts and graininess. It does have lossless 2x zoom, somewhere around there, I think, on the user interface. And you swipe up and swipe down just as on the old Lumias, which is very handy. Very handy indeed. Stabilisation is electronic, not OIS, although OIS is there for stills. You just haven't used the OIS in video mode. But stabilisation is pretty good. All more than, quote, up to par for the price point. So, well above average for user-facing components then for a budget smartphone. Inside, things are a little more aligned with expectations, though still very fully featured. A Snapdragon 636 with 4GB of RAM keeps everything running smoothly though. A Bluetooth 5, aptX support, NFC, though not in every world region, so do check. Dual Wi-Fi bands, all LTE bands for all regions that I can see. Water repellent, micro coating for all internals. Always a better way to go than relying on fragile external seals, in my opinion. Plus FM radio circuitry and a terrific auto-scanning FM radio application with your headphones as the aerial. Though you can not only reroute audio through the stereo speakers, but also record radio to your heart's content. All built in, nothing to hack, wonderful. Plus you get that 27-watt fast charger and a clear form-fitting TPU case in the box. Not always the case at budget price points. There we are, nicely cased. On the software side, Moto has stuck to its strategy of keeping stock Android with just a handful of Moto add-ons. So just the Google apps, no duplicates. Even Moto Voice isn't enabled by default, thankfully, so you get Google Assistant. The handful of Moto actions are actually very useful. A double twist to launch the camera. There we go. A double chop to toggle the very bright dual LED torch. Plus a swipe over the powered display to see battery, date and time. Notification icons appear on the bottom and can be swiped up to show their details, which is a nice touch. Android 9/Pie is implemented in stock fashion here with a choice of navigation controls, unlike on the Pixels. The slimline Motorola Pill is my favourite, with swipe left for back, swipe forward to toggle to the last app, swipe up for multitasking, swipe further for the apps list, just as on the Pixel. Very neat and a little iPhone-like, though going further, I think. There's the option for a system-wide dark theme, though it doesn't extend to all applications and crevices. Even the G7 Plus's own settings appear on a white background, for example. Still early days in terms of updates, though Motorola hasn't said that the G7 range will be updated to Android Q. I doubt it will. There's not enough profit at this price point to allow for update R&D. The review G7 Plus was on January 2019 security, and I'd expect at least quarterly updates for a year or so. Now, back in the day, the Moto G line was rightly regarded by all, including me, as a great budget phone that you could recommend to any non-techie teenager or parent. Just buy this year's Moto G and you'll be fine, etc. Like saying, buy the latest iPhone, but without the financial outlay. Over the years, I've taken all of this as read, and it's still true, as proved by this, the new £150 Moto G7 Play with tough and textured back, a 5.7-inch notched screen, styled like the iPhone X, maybe for street cred reasons with teenagers. Compared to the G7 Plus, the RAM drops from 4GB to 2GB, storage from 64 to 32, plus micro SD, of course. The camera drops the OIS and uses a smaller lens. There's no NFC for Google Pay. Plus, there's only the one speaker, but you do keep the fingerprint sensor, not always a given at ultra budget prices, and you do keep the 3000 mAh battery, which will last for at least 2 days, I think, on this specification. You also get the peak display, though you do have to lift the phone a little. There's no ambient sensor swipe detection, and you get USB Type-C for charging. This really is a Moto G for 2019 and beyond, and we now live in a Type-C world, even at the bottom of the spectrum. Highly recommended for normobs in your family or friends who don't really appreciate their tech and who just want something that works. It's more rugged than a glass sandwich design, will survive a lot more abuse, and when they do manage to break it, it's only £150 to replace from new. Result. There's also the G7 Power with similar spec to the Play but thicker and with a larger battery, and a vanilla G7 halfway between the Play and the Plus and aimed at traditional Moto G success markets around the world. Oh, and worth noting that all 4 G7 models come with a case in the box. But for phone show viewers, that's you, could a humble Moto G now be a valid primary smartphone at well under £300? I think so, yes. With the G7 Plus, Moto caught my attention with stereo speakers and Dolby Atmos. They nailed it by putting in a large apertured camera with OIS. Expect this G7 Plus to be in my next top 5 phones by virtue of competing with the big boys at a half or even a third the price.